Hey, so we're in the final hours of EthCC here, but the good news is that it's late enough at 3:20 that even the most degens in the group were able to be up for this, so that's great. I'm Yaniv. I'm going to be talking about solving the world's biggest challenges with Web3. So sometimes it feels like we're watching the end of the world. I don't know if you ever have this experience. I know what you're doing on Twitter, doom scrolling, all day. But maybe we don't have to just watch this stuff going on. Maybe we can actually do something. And what we need is new ways to coordinate, right? Because whatever's going on in the world, we have the resources, we have the technology, we can fix all of the problems. We just need better ways to coordinate. And so, if we want to tackle the big challenges that are happening in the world, what are some examples? And figure out how to make Donald Trump be quiet for 5 minutes. I only want 5 minutes would be great. Or how to make Biden stay awake for 5 minutes. Equal opportunity. Both of these sides. Or I wanted to find a problem that I could really dedicate myself to prove out this Web3 stack and how effective it can really be. And so I wanted to choose a problem that was a really big problem. And the one that we landed on was ending homelessness in San Francisco. So raise your hand if you've heard about the homelessness problem in San Francisco. Okay, so that's everybody in this room. It's a really big problem. It's a humanitarian crisis. There's so much human suffering, and it's really harmed one of the great cities in the United States. And it may seem intractable, but I actually think that we can solve this problem. And so I want to go over in this talk the tools that we can use and the framework for thinking about how to solve a big problem like this. So it starts with policy, public policy. There's a lot of questions that come up if you look at how to solve or address an issue like homelessness. Right? Should people be allowed to shoot up on the street? Should treatment ever be mandated? Should there be conditions on receiving housing? These are all actually difficult, complicated questions, and lots of people would have different answers to these questions. And so, we need a way to get better at understanding the world so that we can make better decisions. Luckily, we have a tool that can help us do that. And that's knowledge graphs. So a knowledge graph is the most flexible way of representing information. In a knowledge graph, you have everything as an entity. And so Ethereum can be an entity, I can be an entity, Paris can be an entity. And then you can assert facts about those entities that change over time. And you can express relationships between different entities. And so you can represent just even the most complex free-form types of knowledge and information in this sort of structure. So one of the things that we can represent with that is things like claims. So if you have a claim, you can add the supporting arguments and opposing arguments to that claim, or other people can add that. You can cite your sources. And so maybe you want to cite a study that was done that backs up your claim, and that study can also be an entity. And experts can come in and debate whether that study was done correctly or not, and if it's not, then you can't use those claims. So with this type of a tool, we can represent really complex topics and actually get to a point where we start to have shared facts, and then we can have reasoned debates, and we can start to understand the world better and make better decisions. But how do we make sure that there's good information that's going into the graph? How do you stop people from just adding misinformation? And it really comes down to governance. And so with blockchains, we have like public governance systems that we can build with blockchain-based voting. And we can design reputation systems to give more power to experts that know more about any certain area. And through voting, you have a public process where over time we can converge towards truth. So that's what we're building at GEO. We're building tools for communities to organize any kind of knowledge and information into a knowledge graph, and then giving those communities tools to get to consensus on the state of those knowledge graphs. And right now, there are an early set of editors that are adding content in all kinds of different spaces, from sustainability to history, AI, music, art, so lots of different things. But one of the things that we want to do on top of this is show how we can solve the world's biggest challenges, and going deep on the area of homelessness in San Francisco. So one of the spaces that we have is the San Francisco space. And you could imagine organizing anything from local places, restaurants and bars, to events, to having like a list of goals for the city of San Francisco to tackle. And one of those goals is we have this subspace under San Francisco for ending homelessness. And here we're organizing these discussions where we're looking at these claims and questions and goals for ending homelessness. And from here, we're spawning a set of DAOs to go out and achieve each of the goals that we've identified. DAOs are a really effective tool to help us solve big challenges. For example, the city of San Francisco spent $1.4 billion last year to address homelessness through nonprofits. And there's very little accountability for where that money is going. And so with DAOs, we have transparency and accountability. All the money's on chain, so we can actually see where this money's going. And so if we start to use these sorts of tools to tackle real problems in the real world, they can be much better than the alternative systems that people are using. So the first DAO that we announced that we've helped spawn is doing transitional housing in San Francisco. So this year, this team is working on a pilot where they're building a tiny home village outside of San Francisco with about a dozen tiny homes. And this is something where if somebody wants to get off the street, they'll be able to stay at one of these tiny homes and be connected to resources to help them get back on their feet. There's several other DAOs that we're also going to be spawning to tackle different parts of the problem. So, for example, one DAO focused on street outreach for people who want to go out on the street, build relationships with people on the street, and then help connect them to resources. We want to have a DAO for recovery to help people get clean, a DAO for workforce development to help train people and help them find jobs. So, one DAO per goal, and that way, we can distribute resources and make decisions to, tackle this problem. And, I really believe that, Web3 is incredibly powerful, and that with it, we can solve, a problem like homelessness in San Francisco. So how are we going to fund this? It's going to take some money. I've been, self-funding this to date to show an initial proof of concept and show that, this technology can really work. The next step is going to be opening this up so that people in the crypto community that want to show that, crypto can be used to make an impact can get involved and help us with this mission. And once we prove out how effective these tools can be at a next level of scale, then we can go to governments like the city of San Francisco to get public funding to scale this out. And I think once we demonstrate that these tools are more effective than than the existing ways of doing things, then I think it'll be really easy to get the public on board. So we're focusing on San Francisco, but you could imagine using this sort of process to solve any problem in any city. So imagine having a space for every country, for every state, for every city, and you could have a ranked list of what are the biggest problems, what are potential solutions, claims, questions, and start to organize as subspaces to address local issues to solve all of the world's biggest challenges at a local level. So if you want to get involved, right now we're opening things up for early access editors. You can go to geobrowser.io/early access or scan this QR code. We'd be happy to get you onboarded. And tweet about the work that we're doing. We're at GeoBrowser on Twitter. We want to get people starting to talk about this. And if you're working on something right now that you feel like isn't as impactful, we've been spending a lot of time building infrastructure and foundation, and it's really time to start bubbling this one level up to start making real impact in the real world. And so I would invite you to think about what are the big problems that you see in the world, in your local cities. Maybe you could start one of the next spaces or DAOs to tackle these problems, and we'd love to work together to do that. I really do think that we can use Web3 to solve the world's biggest challenges. So thank you. All right. Yeah, do we have any questions?
Hi. What do you think is the fundamental difference between a DAO and a NGO in terms of being able to solve these problems effectively? You mentioned transparency, one doesn't say where the money's going, and here the transactions are on chain. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I do think transparency is one of the biggest things. I also think that this type of composability and the way that we can just organize in much more fluid ways, right? So, for example, starting with a goal like ending homelessness in San Francisco, that's something that maybe a lot of people would want to contribute to, but there's a lot of pieces to that. So being able to easily break out into sub-DAOs, essentially, and then to focus on each one individually, just workforce development or just transitional housing and direct funding at that level, and then further down. And so having that accountability at each stage and being able to distribute resources to the most effective, teams or individuals, and then having full transparency over that. I think that that type of composability and transparency, and then also having accountability through voting and having lots of people that can kind of participate in that process, I think that is all is what makes us more effective than traditional NGOs.
Sorry, a very quick one. Can we see your slides one more time? How to get early access? Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, everyone.